So I have a bone to pick with you today.
All right. I know this is coming, so let's do this.
Do you want to do the other stuff first, or you want to jump in there?
Nah, let's just get it over with.
All right. Question number 1. Why?
All right. So first of all, maybe we should explain what we're talking about
Yes.
for people who don't
Yes.
spend too much time on Twitter. I sent Joe a screenshot, and it was of an application in my dock, which was a task management application, but it was not OmniFocus. I have switched to To-Do, and let me explain the whole process I went through to get here. All right, so we've mentioned before that we had Matt Ryan on the Productivity Show, and he did a great job explaining the benefits of To-Do. And honestly, I was probably convinced when I was recording with him, but then he made this comment. He's like, well, the nagging reminders and the multiple contexts is coming to OmniFocus later this year, so maybe you don't have to switch. And then I was like, yeah, Matt, maybe you're right. Maybe I don't have to switch. I can just continue to do this. Then Things 3 came out, and it blew up in the dojo, and people were talking about it. And I'm like, I got to figure out what this is all about and kind of give like the Asian efficiency stance on Things 3. Which is an absolutely beautiful application. I still don't like the fact that they don't have start dates, and there's issues right now with repeating projects. You can actually not repeat tasks inside of projects, which is kind of strange. So there's a couple things that just make it not ideal, but you can tell they put a ton of effort into the design, and it made me want to use it because it's just so well designed. You can like there's the button to add tasks on iOS, and you can actually drag that wherever you want in the screen. And there's just like little animations and
Things 3?
Yep. And there's just like little animations and whimsy in it that just make it like really fun to use. And I was like, oh man, this is so much more fun to use than OmniFocus. Like I really wish this would work for me. And then I was thinking, well, what are the other options? What about To-Do? And I went back and looked at To-Do, and I'm like, well, this interface isn't that great. Like, I'm not going to switch because of the interface alone. But what were those other reasons that I was thinking about To-Do back in the day and never switched? And I dug into the nagging reminders, and the multiple context is a thing that Things 3 also has. So that wasn't as big a deal. But the nagging reminders work really, really well in To-Do. I just created a couple of them. I'm like, well, I'll just see how these work. And it's great. It's actually, in my opinion, kind of like a good balance between Do, which if you don't mess with the settings, is just going to annoy you every 5 minutes. Like I remember when I first set up Do, I would get a reminder and it would appear on my lock screen like 20 times if I happened to be in Do Not Disturb mode or whatever.
Right, because it will
at it.
not leave you alone. Yeah,
Exactly.
It just continues to nail you.
Which is the idea. I get that. And that is important the way I was using OmniFocus, where you get a notification, and it is honestly very, very easy to miss. And so I was using Do for the things that like, okay, I have to make sure that this gets done by this specific time. And then as I'm going through and looking at all these different task managers, I'm thinking to myself, like, yes, OmniFocus, like the nagging features and the multiple tags are coming to OmniFocus, but there's no clear indication of when. Ken Case is super excited about all of the new features that were announced in iOS 11. So like I'm going through all the tweets, and I'm seeing the stuff that they've said previously, like, oh yes, this is coming. And then you look at their product roadmap, and like there's so much that they are focusing on that honestly I think has a better chance of happening first. So that brought me to the point where I kind of needed, it's been like a really busy month for me, and my task management system needs kind of a reset anyways. Like I need to just sit down and do the brain dump again and make sure that everything is in there. Like it's kind of gotten to the point, I've neglected it a little bit, where I need to kind of start from scratch anyways. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, why don't I just do that inside of To-Do and just use that until this stuff comes to OmniFocus? If I have to kind of do the initial brain dump process again anyways, why not use this tool that I know is going to meet all my needs, rather than trying to splice together a system which is using different applications? Like that's just, the more I thought about it, I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. And yeah, so To Do is on my dock, and I'm giving it a legit shot.
Nice. So the whole, because you had a concern at one point about this being under one developer, because isn't To Do the one that there's just one guy doing the whole thing?
Yes.
Is that the one?
Yeah, it is. So that's another. Thanks for bringing that up, because that's another piece of the context for this decision. I also just finished a module for Screencast Online on MailMate. MailMate is like my favorite application of all time. Also a single developer. And that just got me thinking, like, I'm trusting my entire email life to a single developer. Why can't I do the same thing with a task manager? And then I'm going to the Mac App Store. The Mac App Store is, according to listener Josh, a dumpster fire. But
yes.
I do have a bunch of applications that I've had purchased through the Mac App Store over the years. So periodically I go in there and just to see if there's any updates for things. And what I saw over the period of the last like 2 to 3 weeks is To Do get updated, I think 3 different times.
Wow.
Yeah. So the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, it's a single developer, or at least it's a very small team. And, but I'm already using a single developer app for MailMate. And honestly, like that has been great. So, I feel like I never really gave To Do a fair shake, and I really am liking it so far. The other thing I noticed was that MailMate does integrate directly with To Do, so that's the first thing I tested. Is like, how does this actually work? Like sending emails into tasks and To Do, like is that process efficient? Because if it's not, then this is not going to work. But it works great, and it also integrates with Dispatch and Airmail and any other email application that you might want. So yeah, I think that this has the potential to meet all the needs and check all the boxes. And yeah, I really enjoy it. I really like the supporting materials tab, or whatever you call it. I don't know. Like you can attach different things to your tasks. Like you can have a link, or you can, or an audio note or a location. And I really like that. I really like being able to see, like in the task name, like, oh, there's a picture associated with this. Or there's an audio note associated with this, or there is a specifically, a link that's associated with this. And so when you send stuff from an email application, for example, like MailMate, it just automatically attaches that link, and it attaches it as the link. It doesn't actually show up in the notes field. You can just see like, oh, there's a link associated with this task, and then you just click on that to access the message.
So I've been considering an exploration of task managers lately. So this is partly why I was interested in some of your rationale here, because I have been such a strong OmniFocus user for a very long time. So much so that I've never downloaded Things 3. To Do, I've never installed. Todoist, I've never installed. Like these are things that I've never actually used in any way, because OmniFocus fits me so well that I just don't see the point of exploring anything other than that. But the one thing, because whenever I do some of these searches to try to figure out what some of these things can do, because I've considered going on an exploration of this, just because it seems like the Omni group has gotten slower with catching up, if that makes sense. So that's the only reason I would consider it, because there are some things that come up. And I don't want to say like the recurring reminders thing, the nagging reminders thing. I don't think that's enough by itself. The whole I need to start over and do a complete revamp of my system, I understand that. It's not something I feel called to do right now. So I could see where that's helpful as well. So I've considered this exploration, but the one big key piece that I can't find in another task manager is anything around templates or the ability to create templates. Does To Do touch that at all?
That's a good question. To tell you the truth, I am not sure, but I'm sure that Matt Ryan would know, or at least he'd have a way to do it if it's not officially supported.
Right.
Which is kind of the other thing
I use a lot.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the not the template specifically, but that's kind of the other thing that kind of pushed me in this direction is, well, if I encounter anything I know that I could ask Matt and he'll have an answer for me
Right,
because
right.
he's thought through all of this stuff. So yeah, it doesn't look like there's templates, but I think I saw somewhere on the internet like a way to do those. I even found like a hack, but it's in the to-do documentation, like how you can actually export everything from OmniFocus and get it into to-do if you wanted to just
Oh wow,
make a straight
did you
copy.
do that?
I didn't because I wanted to rethink everything. So I'm starting completely from scratch.
Blank slate. Let's start over. That makes sense. I think if you're going to start over with a new app like that, it makes a lot of sense to rethink how you're going to do it because the app's going to work differently. So you may have a lot of tweaks and adjustments that you're going to want to make to that system. Because and that's something that I've considered. With OmniFocus, it just seems like there's a lot of the small, like the animations and the intuitiveness of it, and your ability to enter metadata with it. Although I don't do that on iOS, I can see where there's some value in that. I don't really use my phone as much as I think some people do. So I could see where if you were doing a lot of work on the phone and trying to do a lot of task management processing on your phone, trying to use something other than OmniFocus might make a lot of sense just because they don't seem to have it to be simple to do a lot of that metadata entering. And I do a large amount of that on my Mac. Primarily, my phone is a capture device. That's primarily what I use it for. So I've considered this whole thing. I don't know that I'm going to go there. To be honest with you, Mike, the one that actually is most appealing to me right now is a paper system, which seems just ludicrous. But yeah, that's kind of how I seem to do things anymore. Is let's do it on paper. Here we go again, Joe.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that, to be honest. And I fully expect that once OmniFocus incorporates some of these key features, like they've got a team, and I'll probably end up going back to OmniFocus at some point. I'm already invested in those apps, but I also already had to do so. Yeah, I guess, plus also a big piece of this, honestly, and this maybe is just, justification for shiny new object syndrome, but it is what it is. Like, I work for a company that people expect to know, like, well, what does agent efficiency think about this? And I can expense these types of things to the company to do quote unquote research. I'm not trying to like make it sound like, oh yeah, I'm just buying stuff because, it's productivity. But, when there's something that like legitimately I need to know what to say about it, like it's a great situation because agent efficiency is like, yeah, go ahead and do that. Like no questions asked, just go ahead, buy the thing and play around with it. And so like a little bit of that is, that is enough to push me over the edge, I think, for some of these things. Is like I tend to not go chase the shiny new object. I tend to like dabble a little bit, but I won't fully jump into something unless, in this particular case, it's like we have a community that's wanting to know what about this particular app, or what kind of started this whole thing was like, what about Things 3? Because that's kind of the new hotness right now.
The new hotness. There you go. No, I've considered a lot of this stuff, at least within the last week or so. And although I say I'm considering it, the chances of me actually leaving OmniFocus are pretty slim, just because things like sequential and parallel projects and single actions lists, things like that, I am very heavily dependent on. Things like being able to do templates, deferring projects or tasks away from me right now so I'm not seeing them. Like those little bits are so integral into how I use a task manager, and I can't find those outside of OmniFocus. They've made me reliant on them. So trying to do something else just doesn't seem to work, and every time I've run across another system that I think is new, shiny, and fun, I can't do those things. I haven't found anything that does those, and if I can't handle those, why would I even consider switching everything else to go with it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of killer features for OmniFocus still, like the task paper input method, so you can real easily create those templates in like workflow or stuff like that. The AppleScript support, I believe they're adding JavaScript support to all of their apps, which opens up a whole bunch of automation doors. But I guess I'm not enough of a power user for that stuff to really matter to me. What I want is nagging reminders in multiple contexts.
See, I've talked to some folks about the multiple context thing. I think it does more harm than good in the long run. That's my opinion.
I probably would have agreed with you up until about a month ago. There was an episode of the Productivity Show where Tan was interviewing Charles Bird, I believe, about how he uses Evernote. And they got into the whole discussion of like folders versus tags. And Tan has always used the folders. Charles convinced him, I think, to start using the tags. And this is something that I have struggled with. I know other people personally who have struggled with this. Is like, I want to use tags. I get the idea of tags, but I don't understand how to set these up effectively. So in that episode, and I'll try to get you the link to that. But Charles does a great job of explaining what kind of tags you should really use. And then when you're talking about tasks, there's a lot of very valid reasons to use them. Like in the episode with Matt Ryan, he talked about how if you want to do something when you're in New York and you want to do it with your brother, like those are two separate contexts. How do you justify that? Brother New York context, like that doesn't make any sense.
Yes, but at the same time, if I have a list for New York, because the only chance that I'm going to do that task with my brother and when I'm in New York is if I'm in New York. And for me, especially if I'm making a list for New York, the chances of me having more than, say, one thing on that list is pretty slim. That's where I get caught up on this, because if I have 50 items on a context, it needs to be broken out into more contexts. It doesn't need to be just the one. And the chances of there being so many things that are overlapped that I need to do the multiple context piece, I have too much stuff in my system that's active right now. I need to get some things deferred or on pause. Like, it's just too much to be trying to work on at one time. So it seems like to me the cases where multiple contexts come in and could be useful, it's more often a function of you actually need to say no to some things or at least put things on hold, as opposed to trying to do a whole bunch of things at one time. That's just my sense. At least that's how I do things. If I have a whole bunch of stuff on a context or I need to do that, it's an indicator of other issues within the system.
Could be. I think that there's a lot of value in being able to filter information multiple ways. And with OmniFocus, you've got you've got limited criteria that you can use. You've got the context, you've got the project, you've got the start, you've got the defer date, you've got flagged. All that stuff is going to determine whether something is active and which specific context or project that it's assigned to. But I can definitely see cases where it would be helpful to have like an additional layer of information there. And that's kind of where the subcontexts come in. That's kind of the way around it. But listening to Charles Bird talk about how he uses the tags and how he just kind of like stacks them, just like an internet search, to really find something really, really quickly, I think that has value not just for reference material, but also tasks. Although it is a little bit, I agree, of a paradigm shift, especially if you are indoctrinated into GTD canon.
Yeah, that could be. I know that it seems like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, if I have multiple contexts on things, or I have a lot of different tags on tasks or projects, I don't in practice actually use those. Like, I'm not going to pull up my phone and check, okay, I'm at the grocery store and I just ran across a friend. I very rarely will pull out my phone and try to connect, what do I need to talk about right now. I'm not
Right.
going to do that. It's just, in practice, it just doesn't happen. It's only whenever I'm focusing on a specific day or a specific project that I'll run through a lot of those lists. But if you have it so fine-tuned and you have so many different contexts and different tags on things, you have to think that every time that context or tag shows up, or you're a part of any combination of those, you have to check that list. Like, you have to, in practice, have the habit of checking it every time you're in those situations. It seems to me that the people who do that rarely actually follow through on it. At least that's my perspective. You probably talk to a lot more people about this than I do.
Well, like I said, it's an experiment, but I do know that another feature where I could totally see this being leveraged into do is they have these like smart lists, which are essentially like smart mailboxes for email, except it's for your tasks. So I don't know enough about these to really tell you that, yeah, this is totally worthwhile and this is a killer feature, but it seems to me like there's a lot of potential there. So I will report back.
Yeah. I think as long as it's helping you get stuff done and it's not a fiddle tool, then go for it. Like, that's what I tell people. Is as long as you're not going to blow a whole bunch of time playing with it, it's not a game. It's to help you get stuff done. Like, that's the whole purpose here. So I think as long as it does that,
on that front,
have fun.
Probably jury's still out, but we'll see.
Okay, we've had our little bit on to do now. You want to do our actual follow up?
Yeah, sounds good. Let's talk about the 7 habits results. Do you have yours handy?
I do. I will get that pulled up. Where is the thing?
I'm going out of order. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, I have it up.
Okay, so this is the personal effectiveness quotient assessment, which came with at least the version of the book that I bought. And on the first page, they have a breakdown of the effectiveness categories and then the scores. So highly effective is 85 and above. Mostly effective is 65 to 84. Less effective, not ineffective or ineffective, whatever.
Yeah, they worded that.
It's very nice. Yeah, it's 64 and below. And then they break it down into, obviously, the 7 different habits. So should we just take turns and go through the overall score and then scores for each habit?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Okay. So
You wanna go first? You want me to?
I can go first.
Okay.
My PEQ overall score was 82. And my first habit, I don't know if that's a good Holy Smokes or a bad Holy Smokes, but what's interesting, though, is the scores for the individual
in comparison,
habits.
Holy Smokes.
Yeah, what was interesting to me, and really, like, this is a self-assessment, so I don't really put a whole lot of stock in the specific number, but I thought what was interesting was, like, the scores, comparatively speaking, between the different habits. So habit number 1, I got a 75, which was be proactive. Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. This one, I got a 93. Habit number 3, put first things first. I got a 87. So I did pretty well on those. But then emotional bank account, this was 78. So that was a little bit lower compared to some of the other ones. Think win-win, that was 78. So that was a little bit lower. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. That was 78. Habit number 6 was synergize, which was 75. So as I go up the hierarchy in terms of the habits, my scores keep getting lower, essentially. But then habit number 7, sharpen the saw, was a 90. And honestly, that one made sense because he talked a lot about rituals and routines, and that's a big emphasis at Asian efficiency. So, but yeah, so my scores were, I'll just run through these again, 82 overall, 75, 93, 87, 78, 78, 78, and 75.
Wow, you blew me out of the water. Like, on everything.
Maybe I just think higher of myself than I ought.
I tend to be a lot harder on myself. Yeah, I tend to be pretty hard on myself. So keep that in mind. Because my overall score was a 63. So not great at all, according to this scale. So for habit 1, be proactive, I had a 58. Begin with the end in mind, I had a 53. Put first things first, I had a 69. That's one of the higher ones for me. So that makes sense because it's a little more on the productivity side of things. Emotional bank account, I had a 63. Think win-win, I had a 73. In comparison, that's quite a bit higher.
Nice.
Don't have a rationale on that one. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, I have a 55. Synergize, I had a 75. So that one I tied you on. Nice. And then sharpen the saw, I had a 63. So I think some of this is I tend to be hard on myself, and the ratings here are strongly disagree, slightly agree, strongly agree, and I'm one of those that has a tendency to not put strongly agree or disagree. I don't know why. I just tend to not do that. So that might be part of it. I tend to not do that.
I think that I've taken enough of these types of assessments that I have no problem picking strongly agree or strongly disagree. But again, self-assessment. So from an assessment perspective, what you would be doing if you really wanted to get valid results is you would be taking like an assessment like this, and then I would take the one about you, you would take the one about me, and you would average out the scores. It's called a 360 assessment. Because a lot of times the person taking the assessment isn't taking it the right way, especially when it's just, an online thing and you don't have any sort of person to direct you like, well, this is what this really means, sort of a thing. You can't go ask the teacher.
Just kind of a bummer. Somebody just tell me what I am.
Yeah, so I don't put any stock, like I said, in the numbers, but I thought it was kind of interesting to see the trends.
Yeah, because I know that I tend to be pretty effective especially with clients and in my family. So it seemed like a bit of a misnomer to me to see that I was hitting the less effective category, just barely, but that is where I landed. It seemed a bit odd to me to land in that because I feel like it's not true. But I wondered if it was all scaled down quite a bit. I don't know. Seemed off. Maybe I just did it wrong. Maybe I should take it again and be okay with the strongly ratings.
Yeah. Well, I don't know specifically like your thought process when you're going through and you're trying to decide between strongly agree and agree, for example. But in my experience, the initial thought that you have is always the right one when it comes to these types of assessments. So if I look at something and I say, I have long-term goals in life, I agree. Like my wife and I talk about this almost every week. So I'm not going to try and rationalize myself down from that point. I'm just going to put strongly agree.
Right. I know I take these things quickly. That way I don't have a chance to think twice. That's what I tend to do. Like, okay, they said take 30 minutes to do it, and I did it, and I think 10. So, yes, I do them quickly so that I don't second guess it. But, I have an aversion to the strongly ratings on those things. Yep. Don't know. That's just what I did. So I thought it was interesting. Again, I think this particular one, at least for me, it was more helpful to see the individual breakdowns as they relate to the overall score. Because if it was higher, to me, that would say that I was doing pretty well in that area. If it was lower than my average, that would be an area I need to work on. That's kind of how I was seeing it. I wasn't getting too caught up on the numbers themselves.
Makes sense.
And on that note, the areas that I'm working on, thus my follow-up items here, because I have 3. One of them I've already thrown out because I don't like it. But the other 2, I think I'm going to keep working on. The first one is my projects come first. And that has proved extremely helpful because I've been working on my own code projects, and that has allowed me to accomplish quite a bit on my own business pieces instead of just the client work. And that'll be helpful because I know, and I'm looking at it, seeing the potential for at least an income that comes in without, what do they call it? The recurring passive income. It sets up the stance for some of those. So it'll be helpful. I'd be glad to get some of those out the door. Hopefully into June, I'll be in good shape with those. The other one here, defer everything outside this week. I've been doing that a little bit. This is going to be an OmniFocus thing that I can't find in any other task manager. Deferring things so that I'm not seeing them right now, which essentially means that my goal is to check off everything I can see in OmniFocus for the week, which is really interesting. So it does require a bit of a mindset shift whenever you go to that, but it's at least something I'm working towards. And then the one that I'm throwing out is weekly planning. I understand why he wants you to do this. I think my business and what I do works too fast for that. Because I set up I did it 2 weeks in a row since we talked last. And I threw it out the window here a day or so ago. But I was putting together my plan for every day a week in advance. And whenever I would do that, I felt pretty good about it. When the days came around, I realized that I have a lot of stuff that shows up that I needed to take care of. And there's also, like, I would tend to leave Thursday and Friday fairly open because I never really know what I need to work on those days. And then the second week, I realized I was rewriting each day as it came along. It's like, oh, this is not working. So weekly planning, goodbye. See you later. That's what I got.
It makes me sad about the weekly planning. I feel like,
Yeah?
yeah, I feel like that's something that, I don't know. Maybe it's just like finding the right way to do it, but I think that identifying like the weekly goal, essentially, like 12-week year, essentially, is pretty effective. I totally get it though, when you're talking about how like that's just not the way that I work. But I kind of think that it's maybe not the high level that's not working, but maybe just like the tactical stuff. So maybe we can chat about that at Max Stop in a few weeks.
Yeah, there you go. Because I know that it was helpful to at least think it through. For a long time now, I've known that I've got, who is it? Mike Vardy has his weekly theme. So each day of the week has a theme that he does. To me, that seems to make a lot of sense because, like, I've got one day a week where I'm in at the church all day. So obviously that's my church day. And I've got a certain day of the week when I do a lot of podcast editing. I've got another day that I tend to do a lot of my own projects. And a couple days a week, I'm focused primarily on client work. But I also have a lot of bleed over where if I'm short on client work, I work on my own stuff. If I'm heavy, I tend to put some of my own stuff. The extra time I would put towards those, I would take that away. And I never truly know what that's going to look like until the day comes, because sometimes I find a client and we're back and forth pretty quick. We sign contracts, do initial payments and stuff within about an hour of discovering the thing. And sometimes I can get it built that afternoon and submit it to them, and the whole project is done in one day. Like, there are cases where I do that, and it happens about every other week that I'll get one or two of those. And that just always shoots things and shoots them in the foot because it's just not going to happen to try to work around that. I'm not going to know about that ahead of time. So it makes it a big challenge to plan the week ahead whenever because I kind of thrive off that stuff. It's fun to get those, and it's helpful to my business. So it's hard for me to say no to that stuff just because I can't plan ahead for it. So I don't know how to do the whole weekly planning bit when I don't know when that stuff is going to come through.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I get it. I just think that there's got to be like a way to make that work that would provide a major, like, all the benefits without the pain points that you're experiencing. I just don't know what to tell you right now.
I'm all ears. I would if you can figure out how to do that, I would love to do it, because the process of sitting down and trying to think through my week ahead of time is extremely helpful, and I can see the value in that. But I'm not going to do it just because it doesn't actually become real. Like, it's not something that I can follow through on, so it ends up being a waste of time. So I'm not going to waste that time knowing that I'm going to destroy that plan that I'm putting together.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think the sweet spot for just about anybody is not, this is the plan and it doesn't change, but how do you make it so it changes as little as possible? I think it was Dwight Eisenhower said something along the lines of, plans are worthless, but planning is essential, or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The idea is just like the exercise of going through and creating a plan. Like, it's not the end result that you're after. It's the process of thinking through things and prioritizing and all that. But then, like, I totally get it when stuff gets messed up and emotionally you're like, like, that's not conducive to productivity. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I'll have to ponder that a little bit.
Uh-oh, you're going to hold me accountable on this one.
All right, my turn. So I had write my own eulogy, which I did. This was really interesting and really hard to start on. But then once I got going,
like this is not something I want to do.
Yeah, it was hard to get started. But then once I started, it was. I kept thinking of additional things to add to this. So do you want me to read through this?
That's your call. If you want to read it, go for it.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. So the way I wrote this, just so you're aware, is that I wrote it as like a bunch of bullet points. So it's not like a speech, like when you picture a eulogy, like somebody getting up and waxing poetic about the person's life. So these are just like the bullet points that I wanted. So I'll just go through these individually. Number 1, Mike was a caring husband and father who valued his family above everything else. Number 2, he always made time for his family and was always there whenever his wife or children needed him. Number 3, nothing made Mike more happy or more proud than seeing his children succeed. Number 4, he was a great example of a godly father to his sons, and he taught them to live according to the word of God, not emotions or circumstances. Number 5, he always helped them understand why something didn't work instead of getting upset that it didn't turn out the way they thought. It was always obvious that he valued people for who they were, not what they did. He always had time for people and gave of his time selflessly. He was a private person, but always welcoming. You always knew that if you had a problem, you could talk to Mike. You could always count on Mike to get the job done. He was a real go-getter. Whenever you spoke with Mike, he made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. He was loving and caring, but also tough. He never gave up, and he expected you not to either. Mike had a spirit of excellence. He expected the same from people that he chose to work with. He was okay with mistakes being made, but he expected you to learn from them and not repeat them as a result of being careless. And then the last one here is kind of like a quote, like, I would love to be able to have somebody say this about me. Mike taught me everything I know about business. He believed in me when nobody else did. He's the one who encouraged me to start my own business, and it completely changed my life. So that's my eulogy.
So you have quite a bit here in this eulogy. My question to you is, what do you do with it? Are you going to read this thing once a week? Are you going to pull it out once a month, never look at it again? What's the goal with this thing?
Good question. I tend to view these types of exercises as like the value is in the exercise itself. And while I definitely see there could be value in reviewing this every week, every month, whatever, I think this is one of those things that just by going through it, you're getting a lot of value. And maybe it's something that I repeat the exercise every year or something just to make sure that I am consistently moving in the right direction. Like really what this articulated to me as I went through this is that my family is the most important thing. Like if you're talking about most important task, like that's it. So then what I need to do is I need to kind of view through my weekly planning and how I manage my calendar and my time and stuff like that. Am I making sure that I am spending enough time with my family to have people say this sort of thing at the end of my life?
Right.
And so I don't think that there's anything super major I need to do in terms of adjustments, but it's a good reminder. And there are definitely little things that I'm going to do in the next couple weeks to make sure that I'm moving things in the right direction. But I don't think that there's a specific, like, if I do X, Y, Z now, I'm going to consider this a successful project or anything like that.
That makes sense. I just wanted to ask because sometimes I hear of people that write these and then it's something they read every morning as inspiration. So I was just curious what your plan was.
Yeah, I totally see the value in that, but honestly, my my inspiration for this was getting done with it so that I had an answer when you talked to me.
So Bookworm has done its job.
Yes, exactly. But I can say that having done it now, I am glad that I did it. And like I said, it was hard to do initially, but there's a lot of value in just like the thinking time. And that's something that a lot of people don't ever create the space for. It's this specific thing, this specific way of thinking is not something that I typically created the space for, which is why I think it was hard for me to do initially. But yeah, it was a good exercise, and it opened my eyes to a couple things. So yeah, I intend to do it again, but I don't intend to go back and reference this over and over.
That makes sense. So what else you got on this list? Write down your current roles. How about that?
Yeah, I wrote down my roles. What I did is I wrote down roles both personally and professionally, and then also titles. So I have a distinction here between professional and titles because titles are kind of like, I've signed up to serve or do this specific thing, so there's expectations associated with this. Whereas I view like the professional roles, these are hats that I want to wear as opposed to hats that I have to wear.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
There's a lot of responsibilities that go along with the titles, whereas the roles is kind of like, I can do this when I want, and if I'm doing a good job of prioritizing and moving my life towards my ideal future, like I will be wearing these hats more frequently than I'm not, but it's up to me to make sure that they follow through. I'm not going to have somebody yelling at me because I messed up, sort of a thing.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, so personal roles I've got, and I'm sure I left some out, but these were like the big ones that I got off the top of my head. Father, husband, son, friend, mentor, disciple, musician. I mentioned I play guitar and I sing on the worship team in my church, so I almost actually forgot about that one until I did the titles. So yeah, this was, again, one of those things that seems really simple, but once you start doing it, it's like, yeah, there's a lot there. You have to devote enough time to do it right, I think. Professional, I put writer, podcaster, content creator, teacher, speaker, marketer, and salesman. And this is, again, like the 80-20 here. Most of these things just came right away. But then the bottom two, marketer and salesman, like if I'm thinking about what I am doing with everything that I put out online, I am really marketing ideas and I am selling myself, whether I realize that or not. And I think that a lot of people like me tend to just be like, oh, I'm not self-promotional. What that means is that you're still a marketer, you're still a salesman, you just suck at it. So I think it was illuminating to recognize that those are definitely roles that I have to wear, and then being intentional about, well, how do I do this without being sleazy? Since I, quote unquote, a lot of people hide behind, I don't want to quote unquote be the sleazy internet marketer guy.
Right. Right.
Well, you don't have to be, but if you don't recognize that you're wearing this hat at all, then that's not benefiting the people who could benefit from your message, and it's definitely not benefiting you. So that was
Makes
one insight. And then titles, product director, Asian efficiency, president at the software company I was at before that, men's ministry coordinator, outreach team coordinator at my church. These are different things that have, like I said, the responsibilities associated with them, which was kind of interesting because I noticed that the titles are kind of like the way that the professional roles manifest themselves, but also I can see where very easily you could find yourself signed up for something title-wise that isn't in line with the roles that you want to have.
So you're aligning roles to the titles and looking for what would that be? The disconnect?
Alignment. Yeah, I mean,
Disalignment,
essentially what you want is alignment between all the different things that you're doing. And I think that for the most part, like this isn't the first time I've done this sort of thing. It's the first time I've done it this way.
Right.
But I frequently am reevaluating everything I'm committed to and looking for things to cut, essentially. That's just not, the role has evolved, or I don't want the title or responsibility anymore. I'll give you one example. Recently, I've been involved with Toastmasters for a long time. I love Toastmasters. I actually, last June, when they did the elections, I signed up. I was secretary for the first 6 months, and then actually the president wanted me to take over for this last 6 months. So I agreed to be the president of our local Toastmasters group.
Nice. Well done.
Well, not exactly. Herein
Okay.
is Mike's tale of woe. All right. So our club has been president distinguished for like 8 years, I think, or something like that. It's like the highest, if it's not the highest, it's one of the highest levels you can reach. So we've done a really good job. It's a successful club in terms of like, this is what Toastmasters looks for in their clubs. But the president that is over the club has been the president for a while, and she's great. She's an incredible person, but she's also going through some stuff with her mom right now. And so it was kind of promised that like, oh, don't worry, I'll hold your hand through everything and show you everything. And as we've talked about, I'm a high fact finder, so I need to know what's going on. I don't roll well with the punches.
Right.
And essentially other people in the group, because she's, busy taking care of her mom, are like, oh, so you're the president, like you're going to do this, right? And I'm like, what? And so there were a lot
Wait,
of
what
things,
am I going to do?
there were a lot of things that I didn't feel I signed up for. Like, for example, one of the things was the training. It was never made clear to me that the officers are expected to be at the training twice a year, which is not a big deal. I mean, it's 2 weekends a year. Except that the area director is not very organized either. And so, like, last minute told us, hey, you need a whole bunch of officers at the spring training. Here are the 4 dates. And all of the dates happened to be while our family was in Florida for our family vacation, which we were only there for like 2 weeks. But it was like last minute, like you expected to be at one of these. And I'm like, can't do it, And so, like, I don't like feeling like I'm letting people down. And I don't want to be responsible for the downfall of the club. So, when they were talking about elections this year, I'm like, you know what? I don't think I can do it. I want to help make the club successful. I'm willing to jump in and do, whatever I can, but I don't think I can commit to these expectations, especially given the fact that we're going to have our 5th kid in September. So I withdrew actually as president of Toastmasters for the time being, and I'm sure I will get involved with it again because I really think that there's a ton of value in the organization, but it's just not something that I could do right now. So, recent example of me trimming my titles and roles.
Wow, that's intense. Like, I see, I don't have a problem telling people that I can't make something that I should be in charge of or should lead. Like, I don't have a problem telling people no to that when it's their fault that I didn't know anything about it. Like, that's not something I struggle with. Like, this is your deal. If you want this to happen, you need to clean this up. Like, I don't have a problem doing that. But it's tough.
I didn't think it was really that. It was more so like the personalities of the people who were supposed to be helping me were not the way I would have approached things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's more so like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. Just show up and we'll do the best we can. And,
right.
It always ends up being really good, but it's really stressful for me. And it's just not something that stress is not something that I need right now.
Right.
So, I respectfully said, I'm definitely interested in helping move the club forward. I definitely want to be an officer in the future. But, for this season, I don't think I can commit to this. And I don't want to say, yes, I'm going to do this and then not be able to do it. I don't think that's fair. So, but yeah, it turned out fine. We're all still friends.
Well, that's good. Positive side here.
Yep.
So you got one more here on the list.
Yeah, and this is the one that I'm not sure how to identify as like, okay, this is done. This is recognize problems as opportunities to invest. Yeah, I don't think that I have made much progress on this one. And I think that it's one of those things that I just need to be more consciously aware of. So it's a good reminder to see it on the list here again, but I don't know how to mark it off as done. And I do know that this is not my natural personality. I view problems as problems. They need to be fixed. So
it's not an opportunity.
Yeah, I guess
this is an issue that needs resolved.
yeah. Well, naturally speaking, yeah, I guess. So I gotta figure out a way to fix that, but I don't know what that is. Any ideas? Let me know at Bobblehead Joe.
Well, good luck with that one. I think that one's more of a mindset that takes a lot of time to shift.
Yeah.
So good luck with that. And that honestly, that one plays in pretty well to our book for today, The Go-Getter by Peter Kyne, because so much of this is about overcoming problems to do something positive. That's kind of how I took it anyway. So anyway, The Go-Getter by Peter Kyne. This is on the Dave Ramsey list of books. So this is a very short book, a very quick read. Doesn't play into our normal nonfiction world very well. I believe this is a completely fiction story. I don't think there's any truth to this one at all. Honestly, I kind of hope there's not. I feel sorry for the poor chap if that's if that's what he actually went through. But it's a short story for sure. I sat down and read it in about 40 minutes or so, and it's primarily about a soldier who comes back from what war was it, Mike? Was it World War One?
I believe so.
Was it First or Second World War? I forget which one it was. Sorry, military people. He comes back from the war. He's looking for a job. He's given a job, and he works his way up through the ranks. But then he's put to a test, and the test is one that shows whether he's willing to go and succeed through anything and everything, or if he's going to fail. That's basically the story. Is that fair?
Yep. Yeah, and I would add, though, that even the way that he got the job was kind of like he had to overcome adversity even before he got the job, because the two people who were in charge of the day-to-day stuff didn't want to hire him, and so he basically went to them, and they gave him the runaround, and so he went essentially over their heads to to their boss.
Yes.
And who happened to also be a military guy, and he hired him on the spot. And so his managers that he was reporting to from the very beginning didn't like him. So that right from the very beginning, he had to dig out of a hole, essentially.
Yeah. So I put on our outline here, what is a go-getter? And I don't know that I have an answer to this. I've spent a little bit of time trying to nail down how would you define a go-getter? And the best way I've been able to come up with it, at least for a definition, if that's what I'm shooting for here, is that it comes down to someone who is given a task or decides on a task or project that needs done, and will do anything and everything they possibly can, morally and ethically correct, positive, without breaking the law or anything. They will go as far as they can to succeed in that task and do anything they possibly can to do that. That's basically what I would say as a go-getter, and the gentleman in the story does that for sure, well above and beyond what you would anywhere expect. I was reading through this, Mike, thinking, holy cow, I would have stopped 3 trials ago. And
yep.
You're still here trying to figure out how you missed your deadline, and yet you're still going. Okay. Not me.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap the story, what happens is that this guy gets hired, and the managers don't like him, but he's very persistent, and he ends up being pretty successful. They give him the worst type of lumber to sell, and he sells it much higher than they thought that he would. So he's being very successful, and then the main character, the Cappy Ricks or whatever his name is, the father figure who technically controls the business, he tells his managers, one of them I think is his son-in-law, that they're going to put this guy to the test, and they're going to have him deliver this blue vase. And he's very specific about how he wants this vase delivered. He doesn't give a whole bunch of details. He's just like, hey, I saw this blue vase downtown. I want you to pick this up and bring it to me on this train at this specific time. And so it's kind of this manufactured test where they put up as many obstacles as they can to see if the person that they've given this test to has the ability to overcome them. And I think they had said that the only other person who had actually done it was the guy who smashed the window and grabbed it.
Yes.
So at the end of the story, when he actually delivers the blue vase, they're astonished that he was able to do this. And the obstacles that they put in his way are pretty crazy. So he tells them initially, go get this blue vase. It's on this street. And so he's like, if you have to pay any money for it, just tell the accountant, they'll reimburse you. Just get this vase and bring it to me because I need it for, I think he was going to give it as a gift for his wife. Is that correct?
It was a wife's friend who collected vases.
Okay. But it's a totally personal thing. It's not professional at all. He's just like, I want this vase. Can you do this for me as a personal favor? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. That's no problem. So he goes downtown and he can't find it. And he goes up and down all these different streets and he finally finds it 4 blocks from where he said it was going to be. And it's in this store and the store is mislabeled. So he's going and he's calling all these people in the phone book who have a last name that's even close to what he was originally told.
Which I don't know that I would have done to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, this obstacle number one, I don't think I would have got there.
Right, because the store is closed, so he's got to try to find the owner. He eventually tracks down the owner. He's like, well, I'm out of town. You can talk to this guy. He'll sell it to you. So he goes, talks to that guy. He's like, well, this vase is like $10,000 in 1920 money, so that's a ton of money. And so he goes and he gets like this diamond ring that he had, leaves it as collateral for this vase, which was originally going to be like $5. I think it was originally told.
I think they wanted $2,000 for it, but the guy actually paid 15 cents for it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely worthless. But even the way that it was framed initially, though, he's like, this vase is, it's a nice vase, but it's not a super, super valuable vase. Like he made it, he did not give the impression that this was going to be a very, very expensive item. And it turns out that he has to go leave like his most prized possession as collateral just for the guy to sell it to him. And then like, he can't find the guy on the train, like one thing after another, but he perseveres and overcomes all of these obstacles. And then he gets on the train with this guy. Like you said, he was supposed to meet him at one specific train, I think at like 7 p.m, but he can't get there. So he works like through the night to get this thing, eventually shows up at the train car at like 3 a.m, wakes the guy up and he's like, here's your vase. And he's like, what are you doing here? Like, how did you do this? And he explains everything and he's like, this is a test. And then he's like, I'm going to kill you.
I was like, I want to put you through the wall.
Yeah. But it was a test to pick the person that was going to manage this important branch of their company, essentially. So he ends up getting like a really, really awesome job out of it because he was able to overcome all of these trials. But yeah, I mean, the deck was stacked against him and it was kind of, I think personally that the test was kind of created to identify the point at which he was quit. Like it didn't seem to me like they anticipated that he was actually going to be successful because, the store is closed. And at one point he's thinking about breaking the window and buying it, but they had even positioned like a policeman right in front of the store. Yeah, they
tip people off on all this, of course.
Yeah, like every single thing that could go wrong goes wrong, and he's still able to deliver the vase. Obviously at great personal expense. But yeah, so it's a very extreme example of a quote unquote go-getter. But I really like this story because I'd like to think that I personally identify with some of this stuff. There's no way I admit, you mentioned at the beginning, I wouldn't have done all that stuff. Me either. But I think that there's value in just the mindset and recognizing that, you don't have to be in that specific situation. As long as you have that mindset that like, this is not going to stop me, going back to Grit by Angela Duckworth, that it doesn't matter what happens to me or what the circumstances are going to say. Like I'm so focused on my end result. I'm so focused on that goal that I'm not going to be deterred by it. I think that if you just have that mindset, you don't have to go through all of the hardship that this guy went through. You're going to overcome a lot of obstacles if you have 1/10 of the go-getterness that this guy did.
Phrase coined. Yeah, this is one that's a bit convicting to try to figure out where at this point in this story would I have stopped. And it's kind of sad when you stop and think about where I would have quit on this. Like, I don't think I would have tried that hard. I would have looked for something a lot easier or a different way to do it. Maybe I probably would have called the guy up and said, hey, this is what they want for it. You sure about this? Like, I probably would have been wanting to contact him. It's like, I don't know that this is what you thought. Are you sure? Give me some more information. Like, that's kind of what I would have done, just to try to find a way to make it easier, potentially, or to even find a way out of it, hoping they'll say, oh, no, I didn't want that, not for that amount. Like, oh, okay, well, then I can go home and cook dinner and go to bed. Like, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I definitely would have sought some clarification on like, well, I don't think this is really what you had in mind. This is what it costs. You sure you want me to follow through with this? I definitely, though, I think if you're going to pick like one specific point where I would have given up on this, it probably would have been when he said, I need it delivered to this train station by 7 p.m. and 7 p.m. had come and gone. I'd be like, well, I did everything that I could to get it there by that time, but there's no way that he wants it after 7 p.m. He's gone. Like that's definitely
Right.
where I would have drawn the line.
But yeah, to think through, like, I've got a buddy that can fly me over there faster. Like, to think through that and then call in a favor of that size to do that, wow, not me. I think I'm with you. If I had gone that far, if I had stuck with it that long, which I don't think I would have, I think at that point when the time has passed, I'd have called it quits.
Yeah. This is a really convicting story because I think that everybody who reads this, maybe this is the point of the story, is that you try to put yourself in the shoes of the guy who's overcoming all the obstacles of persevering and actually is like the go-getter. But I think everybody who reads this is going to identify some point where they're like, yeah, that's enough.
Right. Well, I know, like, this is a short one, so I'm sure our conversation on this book is going to be short, but that works out because we had a lot of follow-up stuff to work through. But I know that it's very easy to read this, say, oh, yeah, that's exciting, and it's motivating, and I should be better at being a go-getter when I'm not. But I wanted to take this a little bit, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this and what you would do with it. But I was trying to think through specific projects where I want to be better about going after things and be better about being a go-getter for those specific projects. I don't know that in my lifestyle that being a go-getter in everything is wise.
No.
I don't think that's smart. You got to take a break at some point. But for me, I know that I want to try to focus on a couple projects and be better about going after things. You know, one of those is one that I've been slowly working my way into with Discourse League and working to build that out. I could get that done faster and better if I went after it instead of just putzing around with it here and there. So I want to be better about that. That's something that Josh has been helping me with over on the other podcast. So I've been trying to be better at that, but this is very convicting for me. So I'm curious, Mike, do you have anything specific that you wanted to apply this to, or do you feel like you're pretty good at this enough so that you don't want to focus on anything with it?
No, I'm glad that you put that on here. This is actually something that I didn't phrase it this way, but I've been thinking about, like, what are my copyright Jim Collins, big, hairy, audacious goals.
Right.
And there's two things that when I read this, I'm like, yeah, these are going to happen. Number one is I want to get a book deal. So I wrote, self-published my own book, but I definitely want to at some point, like, actually get a deal with a publisher, get paid to write a book.
Nice.
Doesn't matter if it's, New York Times bestseller or anything, but like that's something that I think I don't know. It's a big goal and it's not something that I've done before, but it's not something that's completely outside the realm of possibility at this point in my career. Like, I feel like I've, in the words of Cal Newport, developed enough career capital where I could write a pretty good book proposal and people would look at it and be like, yeah, this guy, he could do this, So that's one thing that I want to apply the go-getter mindset to. Like, it's going to happen no matter what. The other one is give a TED Talk. And I've submitted a couple different places to give a TED Talk. I am probably not the person at this point that TED is looking for, because I'm recognizing every time I fill out one of these applications that my idea, I think, needs to be not clarified, not necessarily like honed, but kind of, I don't know, distilled a little bit more. It needs to evolve a little bit into the type of thing that TED is looking for, at least TEDx, like the ones that I've submitted to, are looking for. I've submitted to Chicago. I've submitted to Oshkosh. I was going to submit to Minneapolis, but that one disappeared from the website. I don't know why.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I'm submitting to Naperville, to Omaha. I'm just going to keep doing this, and eventually, hopefully, I can talk to somebody who can tell me. The process is kind of dumb because they tell you if you're selected as a finalist, but what I really would love is some sort of feedback. Like any person that I could talk to, be like, well, yeah, we didn't select you because of this. Like, that would be really helpful, but that's not part of the process, at least that I've seen so far. So
you don't get any feedback on why the yes or no?
Nope. Not so far anyways. And they're all independently organized. So I'm sure that, like, if I find the right one, I will be able to follow up and ask that. but I haven't yet. It's just like, fill out this form online. Great. Thank you for submitting. We'll let you know if you're selected as a finalist in a couple weeks, sort of a thing.
So TEDx Minneapolis 2017, coming on August 18th. They have a button here, submit an idea.
Yeah, that was not there yesterday. I don't know, maybe it was there, and then I have a list of all the different local, quote unquote local, like ones that are close by, TEDx events that are accepting applications. And so that one was on the original TEDx website, where they have like a map of the United States, and they have all the individual things that you can click on and see, this is the contact person, this is the link to submit. Yesterday, that one was down, so I'll have to check that again. But also, if it's in August, that's probably too tight a turnaround. They're probably pretty far in the process already.
Maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't think they'd have the button up there if that was the case.
True.
And especially if they took it down yesterday. Anyway, TEDxMinneapolis.com.
All right. Action item.
And go.
But yeah, those two specific things, I think, are the ones that can benefit the most from this mindset. But also, I think I have to be careful in applying this mindset because, like you said, you can't just apply this to everything. And also, I think how you apply it is important because you have to be evaluating like whether what you're doing is working, especially if it's something that you've not really done before. Like I kind of get the picture from this book that this guy, he's applying at this lumber company. I don't know that he's ever really sold lumber before, but he's selling himself in the beginning of the book as a salesman. And so he my vision here is that like he kind of thinks that he can adapt his skill set to whatever the job entails. And that's kind of the approach with these two BHAGs, if you, big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yep.
Copyright Jim Collins. But I don't know exactly what the specifics are. Like, I think it's a lot of trial and error. You fill out a book proposal and it gets rejected, and then you have to ask yourself why, because you're probably not going to get a big, lengthy explanation on like, oh, we really like this part, but not this part. So I think that just applying like a nose down, just push through attitude isn't necessarily a good thing either. Like you have to constantly be like, you have to be pushing through, but then you also have to step back and you have to look at, what, is this working? Is this not working? And then course correct.
Makes sense. I want to apply this a little bit more to my business in general. Like I talked about the Discourse League piece, but to me, that's one smaller aspect to a bigger, to use a BHAG. If I was going to have a BHAG, it would be to generate over half of my income from recurring passive and focus on that a little bit, because I know that it frees me up quite a bit, and the types of tools and services that typically are created for those types of systems are the ones that I really love doing. So that's where some of that comes in, because I want that to be I want that to be a larger part of the pie in my business's income. So if I'm going to do that, I really kind of have to go after it. It's not going to be something that's going to slowly develop the way I think it will. It really needs a bunch of action up front, and I just haven't done that. So convicting time for Joe. Here we go.
Well, I also think that it's interesting, like you can apply this to your business, but I like the way that you applied it to your business, where it's not, I'm going to apply this mindset to this specific project, but it's more conceptually, I want 50% of my income to come from passive stuff, because I definitely see how you can apply this on the, I guess that would be micro level, like individual projects, push through till this thing gets done.
Right.
I mean, we're working on a presentation. By the time this airs, it'll already have happened for Agent Efficiency on the whole concept of focus. And we've basically been, like, I rewrote the entire presentation, and there's 276 slides or something like that. The previous one was like 90. Yeah. And I've been working really, really hard on this. It happens June 13th. So by the time this publishes, it'll definitely have occurred. But like, it's a very open-ended project with the goal of delivering as much value as we can to the people who sign up.
Yep.
So the go-getter mindset as it applies to that project is, we go through the sprint meeting and we identify this is worth 13 story points or whatever. And then me spending probably, from naturally speaking, way too much time on this project to make it as awesome as I can. But the end result, I believe, is going to be worth it. And so I think that the go-getter mindset, you can apply this to individual projects as well, coupled with, like, from the eulogy, the whole spirit of excellence thing. Like, I want the things that I do to be as good as they possibly can. I don't want to do anything halfway. I don't want to just mail it in. And so I think that there is a lot of value in approaching this, not from like, how do I change my whole lifestyle or my professional trajectory, but how do I apply this to the individual things that I am committed to? I think there's a lot of value in that as well.
So we've been going on this one for a little bit, and I know it's short, so we're going to end up getting through it quick, and we did a ton of follow-up earlier. So let's jump into action items here. I only have one, and we talked a little bit about this, so I'm not going to rehash the whole project thing that we just went through. So maybe we've been doing action items already, Mike. We just didn't admit it. But I have one explicitly that I want to call out because I want to start using the phrase "it shall be done," because that was the indicator that the go-getter in the story would use. And there's a whole backstory to it that I'm not going to go into right now. But if you're interested in that, pick up the book and read it. It's cheap, quick read, but it's whenever he would use the phrase "it shall be done," that was his internal indicator that I will bend over backwards and do anything and everything I can to make this thing happen. And that's something I can get behind. I like the idea of having that indicator, a verbal indicator, that this is something I'm going to go after. So, Mike, I'm going after the 50% of my income from recurring passive. It shall be done. There you go.
Nice. Yeah, honestly, I don't have any specific action items for this book. As soon as I picked it up, I'm like, oh boy, I'm not going to have any.
I know.
Basically a story. But I will point out two other things, which maybe we can kind of morph these into action items. But in the version that I got the hardcover version from Amazon. At the end of the book, there's like the afterword, and then there's a couple different sections on their interpretation of like some of the themes from the book. And there were two in particular that stood out to me. Number one was letting go. Did you see this section in your version?
No, I had the paper version. I don't have this.
Okay, so there's this like
I got jet.
There's like a 2-page chapter essentially at the end of the book on letting go, and they're basically interpreting the events of the book. But in the letting go section, what they talked about was that Cappy Ricks, which is like the old guy in charge of the business, he's passed responsibility for the business to the two managers, including his son-in-law. But you can tell from the story that he's not actually given them the authority to actually perform the responsibility. So it's like, you guys are supposed to be running this thing. And then he jumps in and meddles, and he's like, I don't know why you guys can't run this thing.
I'm going to take over, but I want you to take over.
And I totally get how this can be very, very difficult. And this is actually something that I have dealt with in the family business. Is for a long time, my dad has mentioned like he's technically a retirement age, but he doesn't really want to retire. He doesn't really need to retire, but at the same time, like he wants to have the flexibility to go do stuff. So he's said over and over again, like he's wanted me and this other guy to take over the business. And for years, we felt stuck because it's like, I want you to have the responsibility of making this thing work, but at the same time, I want to make sure that things are done my way, if that makes sense. And his business, same Cappy Ricks, like he's got the right to jump in and control the decisions at any given time. But it got to the point for me where I was just like, I can't handle this. I feel all the weight and the stress of the responsibility, but I feel like I cannot personally do anything about it. So that was really interesting to see. Like I know how that feels, and I don't know necessarily what the solution is, and that's not the main point of the book. It's just one one scenario from the very beginning, which I think it just kind of shows that like there's a lot more to this if you were to really dissect this.
Yeah, there's a lot of like sub stories that seem to flow through it. So
exactly, but it's not necessarily like this is the situation and this is what you can learn from it. You can kind of apply your own interpretation of these events to tell a lot of different narratives. I think that's the kind of what I'm doing with the letting go section, but I don't know. I can see how that could play out, and what that does to me as I read the story is it just helps it resonate with me even more. So I thought that was really cool. Maybe this is getting into like author style, but I thought that was really cool. And then the other thing, and this is maybe the action item one, is the stick to your game part. And the main takeaway from this was to know your gifts and your limitations. So they had talked about at the beginning of the book, they were expanding into all these different markets, and some of them were doing well, some of them weren't. So like, what had happened was the company had kind of overextended itself. And the section title, Stick to Your Game, essentially what they're saying is identify the things that you're really good at, your core competencies, the things that only you can do, your unfair advantage in terms of marketing speak, and stick to those things. Know what you're really good at, know where you're limited, and don't necessarily try to develop your weaknesses, double down on your strengths. Which is it's a little bit different way of looking at things, especially the way that people are naturally wired. I think is we tend to think like, well, I'm not good at this thing, I should get good at this thing. But from a business perspective, no, what you should do is you should hire somebody who's really good at that thing and work with them so that you can focus on the thing that you're really good at. So I don't know, how specifically to make that an action item, but just be aware of, I guess, what are my strengths, and then how do I continue to develop those and maximize those, as opposed to trying to fix all the things that I can do, but I'm not really that great at.
Makes sense. So it sounds like you like his style.
I do like his style. It's not necessarily a great bookworm style.
I wondered about that once I got into it.
But it was a very, very fun read. It was a very entertaining read. I read it in one sitting. I think it took me, 40 minutes or something like that. It's very short, and there's a lot in there. I intend to go back and read it again. But it's not the kind of thing that we typically read, and I think that's good. It's a breath of fresh air to read something in a different narrative style like this. But it's still got a lot in it that you can definitely learn from and apply to your own life. It's just not presented as these are the 3 things that you need to do to achieve X. It's the anti 10X rule.
There you go. No, I would agree with you. This is definitely different for bookworm, which I kind of like. I like breaking the mold once in a while. But like you said, it's very easy to read. You sit down and it's engaging enough that you don't want to stop reading, because it's like, okay, well, he figured out who to call, and then he found the vase. Well, how's he going to get it out of there? How's he going to pay for that? Like, that's crazy high number. Like, so I kept being curious about what comes next. So I really enjoyed that part of it. But like you said, it's quick, it's different, but it's one of those that's almost parable, like where you have to interpret, and it's probably going to be something that comes back. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. This could have been a way to think about this particular scenario. Like you run across a relationship with somebody that you've had some business interactions with. Oh right, you work this way. You're a go-getter. Okay, like it's just helpful to have some of that stored in the backside of your brain. So I really liked it because of that. And, for a rating here, I struggled with how to do this because it's so different than what we've been doing. Like, okay, well, I love the story. I love the premise behind it. I wish it was longer, and maybe that's the only thing I can fault it with. I kind of wish I'd had your version now to have some of the breakdown pieces at the end, because I did not have that. So I'm a bit jealous there. The best I can come up with on how to rate this is that I only wish it was longer, but I loved it. And I don't know that I would recommend it to people, because it's sort of a thing that you just have to kind of want something quick to pick up and read. And I don't really know many people who do that. So I'm not sure if I could recommend it, but I am going to put it at a 4 stars just because I love it. But I don't know. It's far from a 5-star in my mind, but I don't want to give it a 2 or a 3. Like, okay, this is weird. So I'm going to put it at 4.
Fair enough. I actually found the writing style, well, after I got used to it a little bit, I liked it more, but I found it kind of distracting. And that's just, I'm sure, the period that it was written in. Like, I had to reread some stuff in order to understand it, which was kind of surprising to me, but it was a great story. The version that I got, by the way, I think maybe it was republished by Dave Ramsey. He did the foreword for the version that I have.
Oh, that makes sense.
And in the foreword, he talks about how he found this story because he had this old guy who was a mentor for him, and he passed away, and he had this library of books, and he had left a whole bunch of books to Dave Ramsey, like specific ones. What he had done before he died is he went in each book and he wrote the person that he wanted to give it to.
Wow.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool. So maybe that's an action item for me. There's no way you'll be able to hold me accountable for this, but to have a library that I can give away.
Every book, when you get done with it, write a person's name in the front of
it. Yeah. So I thought that was a super cool idea. Very cool story. Very fun, entertaining story. The characters were very, I don't want to say likable because some of them were kind of cantankerous and ornery, but I don't know, very personable. Like, you felt like you really understood who they were and what they were going through. At least I did. And then again, maybe that's like the letting go section where like I resonated with the situation.
Right.
But I also think that it's not, in my opinion, like a life-changing book. It's just a really cool story. So I think that I probably would recommend this one just because it's entertaining and it's probably a great intro to people who maybe don't necessarily read the type of books that we typically cover on Bookworm. I think it's like a great first step for that. But I also think, like, as I was taking notes on this, I had almost no notes. So
I didn't underline anything in this one.
From a Bookworm perspective, I'm going to actually go 3.5 stars. And I think, like, again, that's just from a Bookworm perspective. This is definitely something that I'm glad that I have in my library. And I think it's going to be a great book for the right person. But if you're really looking for maximizing your personal development or whatever, coming from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People to this is quite a shock.
Very different. Well, talking about the transitions, what's coming up next?
Next book is going to be 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, which is my pick. I love Patrick Lencioni, and this book is amazing. And really, I just want to do it because we need to have a Bookworm episode on this book.
Okay, because is this one that you want to link to this one in the future, so we need to do it?
Maybe. This is a book that Tan actually makes everybody read when they join the Asian efficiency team. So this is in his Dave Ramsey collection, I guess.
Nice. So Tan has his own Dave Ramsey list.
Yep.
Nice. So after 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, I've selected The Power of a Positive No by William Ury. And this is, I believe this is one on our recommendations list. So I have swiped it from there. And this is one of those classics that I think people refer to quite a bit. And I've not read it. So I feel bad for not having read it. So I'm going to make you read it with me, Mike.
Nice.
So what do you got in between here and there?
Okay, I've actually got a Gap book that I have in my possession already called Make Your Bed by Admiral William McRaven. And this was inspired by an Art of Manliness podcast episode. I know you listen to that occasionally. Did you happen to listen to this episode?
I didn't listen to this one, but I need to.
Okay, so yeah, this guy, essentially he trains or has trained Navy SEALs. And actually his personal story they get into in the book and some of the stuff that he's had to overcome. But really the spirit of excellence in everything that you do, essentially the idea behind the book, I haven't started reading it yet, is that like how you approach anything is the way that you approach everything. And so from a Navy SEAL perspective, you're expected to have your bed made every single morning, and it's supposed to be immaculate. Like everything's got to be exactly the right way. And the podcast episode, he shares a lot of personal stories about stuff that's happened in the way that he's trained Navy SEALs and how they just embrace this mindset to overcome a lot of different obstacles. Like it's part of the training process. And I just find that fascinating. He tells one story in the podcast. Definitely go listen to the podcast. I put the link in the notes here, so hopefully you can stick this in the show notes. He tells a story about how like when you during training, very first thing they show you is this big bell in the middle of the compound, and the trainer comes and says, if at any point you want to go home, just ring this bell. You won't have to do the runs. You won't have to do the PT. You won't have to do any of the stuff that we're going to expose you to. But then I can tell you right now that if you ring that bell, you will regret it the rest of your life. And so the mantra is kind of don't ring the bell. And I think that there's a lot of parallels from that to just about any situation. So I'm really excited about this one.
Interesting. Maybe I need to add that one to my list. The one I'm going through right now, I picked it up a couple of days ago, Gaining Ground by Forrest Pritchard. It's interesting that you brought up Art of Manliness because I discovered Forrest Pritchard through Art of Manliness. Forrest writes a handful of articles out there that have to do with like gardening and farming and that sort of thing. But Gaining Ground is, I guess it would be his memoir of how he took over the family farm and took it from being a corn and soybean operation into a local foods and organic operation. And that is something I have quite a bit of an interest in. So I'm going to go through it. I'm interested in it. There you go.
Awesome. And if you have any recommendations for books that you would like to see covered on Bookworm, you can go to bookworm.fm/list. You can see links to all the books that we've covered as well as the ones that are planned and recommended. And there's a big button on the right-hand side to recommend a book. So if you have something you'd like to see us cover, we would love to hear from you.
And we are trying to overtake KCRW on iTunes as far as reviews. And we have a little bit of ways to go, so we need your help. If you're willing to help us out, go to the link in the show notes for iTunes, and you can leave us a review out there. Let us know what you think of the show. That helps us to hopefully usurp them and help other people find us as well. But if you also want to engage with us or have a question about something we've talked about, if you want to help me razz Mike about leaving OmniFocus for to do, you can do that on theproductivityguild.com. You'll find a topic there for this show, and you can help me get him well.
Nice. So if you are following along, the next book is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, and we will talk to you next time.